Hello and welcome to the rMetroidvania podcast. I'm Professor Q.
This is Cauldrath from the rMetroidvania subreddit and Discord.
This is Master. I'm also from there.
And this week I'm going to be playing through Day of the Tentacle, the sequel to Maniac Mansion.
So why did we pick this game this week?
We wanted to discuss character switching, and I feel like this game has some of the most interesting character switching mechanics. So let me just go ahead and start this up.
I'm just making sure that we're live in case there's any technical difficulties. Also, we might want to talk about, kind of the relationship between the adventure game genre and the Metroidvania genre, too.
Yeah.
I'm thirsty.
I don't think you should drink that. It looks bad for you.
Nonsense. It makes me feel great. Smarter. More aggressive. I feel like I could. Like I could. Take on the world.
So this is a remake of the original.
Look, Hoagie, it's a hamster.
Now this is the remaster of Day of the Tentacle.
I think I need that for the band, Laverne. Like we could bite its head
Interesting.
off or whatever.
Hands off that hamster.
Friend of yours, Bernard?
He belongs to Weird Ed Edison, and it looks like he's brought us a note. It's from my old friend, Green Tentacle. He says that Purple Tentacle's mutated into an insane genius, and Dr. Fred's going to kill them both.
Why does this guy know
I
tentacles?
thought I was friends with Dr. Fred and those
It's
crazy
from the original game.
Oh,
This is technically a sequel.
I know
Okay.
Yeah.
that I must go
I see. I've never played this game before.
to the mansion.
And so you haven't played the original Maniac Mansion either?
Nope.
Is it possible to put the text back on? I want to say subtitles, but
Oh, I could check.
Yeah, that would certainly be less distracting.
yeah, I think that might be helpful in case we
Easier
talk
to talk
over it.
over it.
Right.
Yeah,
Because I talk over you.
I think I am going to need to turn down the voice volume at a minimum.
Sure. So I'm
Or
watching
just
this.
ignore the game.
This is my first time seeing the remaster, and I played this back in the 90s when it first came out. And I'm like, as with any remake, I look at it and I'm like, that's not how I remember it. And if I remade it, it wouldn't look like that. But I'm sure if I pull up the old pixel art graphics, it probably would be a clear improvement.
So you can actually press a button and it'll toggle between the original graphics.
So this is like the Monkey Island remake then.
Yeah.
It's nice when games do that.
I think it's good to do that. I kind of wish the Demon Souls remake did that.
Demon's Souls is more of a... It's not just remastering it with graphics, though. It's a new game, correct?
No, it most people are saying that there's basically no differences between it and the original besides some quality of life improvements.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Which, I mean, there's merit to that. Especially in an environment where you can't play the game unless you emulate it or play it on the original platform. So I've actually never played Maniac Mansion. I only played this one. I was aware that this was a sequel to Maniac Mansion, but I don't know exactly what happens in Maniac Mansion.
Okay, we'll spread out commando style. Laverne, you go secure the area behind those double doors. Hoagie, you take care of upstairs reconnaissance. I'll maintain Command HQ here, in the lobby.
What are we looking for?
We've got to find where Dr. Fred is holding the tentacles.
This better not take too long. I've got an anatomy final tomorrow.
And I've got a show to set up later tonight. If I'm late, I don't get to test the drums.
If I know Dr. Fred, he's got the tentacles tied up in his secret lab. Question is, where's his secret lab?
How do you tie up a tentacle?
I was
Well,
gonna... Oh, go ahead.
They grew arms. Well, the one grew arms, so you can tie up those arms.
Those arms apparently make him evil.
Yeah.
Yeah. The tentacles seem used to life without arms, though. I'm sure they could manage.
Oh yeah, so this is what the game originally looked like.
It's actually pretty faithful.
It is faithful. Would say I prefer the original.
Now that I think about it, did the original have voice acting? Because that voice sounds familiar.
I could have sworn it did.
Yeah. Like the Darth Vader calendar.
Gee, Dr. Fred doesn't have a penny. Wow, it's from my favorite movie.
Good old LucasArts.
Oh yeah, let's go to the options. Let's see if we can turn on subtitles.
There you go.
And let's turn down the voice. And let's just turn down everything.
So obviously, games like La Mulana or Mystic Bell are they're kind of like hybrids between the adventure game genre and the Metroidvania genre.
Design, sturdy construction, attractive
But I kind of think that
all in all,
there's a
fine.
close relationship between the two genres.
Maybe. Hey, we made it 6 minutes without mentioning La Mulana.
You can put your stopwatch away now. Hey, that one was extremely relevant in this situation.
We have at least not mentioned that other game that we usually mention by now.
Well, I don't think that we can. There's a reason to bring it up with this game. You can't die in LucasArts games.
I mean, we did immediately mention Demon Souls.
Oh, that's
Like,
true.
Oh, yeah.
The
We were talking
But
about
that's a
You said-
completely different game.
Use it up, stuff.
we were talking about remakes and remasters, and that is the most relevant remaster right now. So
Lost.
Seen any tentacles?
That's fair.
What's a
Though I feel like
tentacle?
with most topics, you can look for an excuse to mention it and make it relevant.
sure,
Try hard now.
and that is the effect of the Watershed game.
But going back to like these point-and-click adventure games, like they are under the same adventure umbrella that Metroidvanias are under, so there is necessarily some overlap there.
I've always thought it was funny that the genre was called the adventure genre
Okay, you're
because
free to go.
that's such a broad word. Technically, any game could be a adventure.
Adventure is pretty broad, though. I
Well,
I
if you
guess
like,
the way it's used is often similar to how you could say it's used
yeah.
in movies,
Now I remember.
where there's some sort of
Incredibly evil, isn't
exotic
he?
chain of events happening, and that's the adventure.
like if there was a game where you were sitting at your desk the entire time and never went anywhere, I guess that wouldn't be an adventure.
Tentacle do?
Sure. What game would that be? Like Papers,
Papers,
Please?
Dr. Fred,
What have you done this
What
time?
genre would you put Papers, Please in? Puzzle?
Now, Purple
Um,
Tentacle is free to
It's like a
use
management
his
genre.
power
Yeah.
over the world
Simulation.
and enslave
Simulation is probably a good
humanity.
place for that. Or we could call it a Metroidvania. I mean, you do need to have different tools as the game goes on, right?
But there aren't things that you can't access at the beginning of the game that are there, but you can't, like, things that are there that you can't access until you get those two tools.
Right. That's true. We were talking about doing Quest for Glory on stream at some point, and I think that if we were to take any adventure game and say it's a Metroidvania, that one's probably the closest, maybe. And you got an open world map that you can't access certain things until you get specific abilities. But usually you have to level up to access those things, I'm pretty sure.
Well, I would consider like the spells to be more like abilities.
Sure, but that only applies to characters that pick up those spells.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be.
Like the other characters, like the other character classes, pretty much just do the same things at the end of the game as they do at the beginning, but do them better.
This must be that Woodstock place Mom and Dad are always.
I think part of the
about.
comparison between adventure games and the Metroidvania genre is proof that it's useful to add platforming as a requirement for Metroidvania games, because clearly that is one of the major distinctions.
We may not live to see yesterday.
Well,
I'm sure Dr.
most of the time in like point-and-click adventure games, you just get items that are basically just keys that you just like rub on the environment somewhere and they do things once. Like there's occasionally ones that you can use in like a couple different places, but most of the time it's just like single use, which is different from the abilities you get in Metroidvanias.
We were joking about making a thread about Monkey Island being a Metroidvania, and I think you use the rubber chicken in at least 3 different places in that game, so that's an ability upgrade. Oh, and it's even a movement upgrade because you need it in order to get into one of the houses, because the rubber chicken has a pulley on it.
Hey, if Guacamelee can do it.
I love how, oh no, we have a problem with the tentacles. Time machines! It's the immediate response.
You can't like go try to get the tentacle.
Right.
You have to like go back in time to stop it.
It's a true mad scientist solution to the problem.
My dials say that the largest specimen landed 200 years in the past.
I also like how he refers to the bigger guy as the larger specimen.
Well, hurry up and bring them back.
So I figured that Day of the Tentacle would only take place during one day, but it appears not.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when the actual Day of the Tentacle is.
200 years in the past.
That's true.
Well, he'll be needing my patented super battery then, won't he?
I don't know, what else would you title this game as? Maniac Mansion 2?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Like, there's probably a lot of people out there who don't realize the two games are connected.
They're in this house somewhere.
Like, if you've only played one or the other, then you would probably have no idea. Well, actually, no. This one has Maniac Mansion in it, so you would, like, know that it exists and is called that.
Sure, like if you happen to find the Maniac Mansion inside this one.
Get
Yeah.
out of my house. Let's get cracking.
Let's get cracking.
Oh boy, I didn't even realize that was a pun until you said that out loud.
And for some reason, it just sits here for a long time, so I'm just gonna...
Well, that's weird. Why is it?
I don't know.
We just decided to pad the game
Maybe I
out.
put them upstairs.
Yeah, that extra 5 seconds.
Upstairs.
So I think it takes a minute before you have access to the other 2 characters.
Yeah, I don't currently. Like, they show up on the right here next to the gear.
So those are your
You can
ability
switch them.
upgrades for this game, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about, we brought up this game a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I thought it would be interesting to have a Metroidvania game that had character switching, but the characters were in environments that were incompatible with each other. And what's cool about this game is I think you can switch between the characters and they are exactly where you left them off. Like if you switch, if you're in a room and you switch to the other character, they'll stay in that room until you switch back to them.
Yeah. That's how it was in Maniac Mansion 2.
using the highly
I really should play Maniac Mansion. That game seemed like it was kind of difficult, though. Could you die in that game?
I think there's a way to die. Yeah, there's a way to die, but you like have to try really hard to do it.
Okay, I thought there was like a time limit or something. If it's like any other LucasArts game, then usually they're pretty friendly.
Fred, can you hear me?
I think you could lose the game.
Did you hear something?
Like towards the end, it starts like a time-sensitive part, I think. And then if you don't do it fast enough, then you'll lose.
Oh, great. I'm stuck in colonial times. Tentacles are taking over the world, and now the toilet's backing up.
Okay, come over here. It's your old pal, Dr. Fred.
Dr. Fred, how'd you get in there?
It's also kind of interesting that all the characters kind of effectively have a hive mind that transcends time and space.
Oh, sure. Right. I know what could solve the puzzle back in the past. I'll just send this hamster back there. Oh, wait, you can't. I forgot you can't send living things. There was a... You put the hamster in cryostasis, which I think is hilarious.
Plug in your chronojar.
Don't you just shove him in the freezer, and that's the cryostasis?
There's a, like, ice box.
This game is great. I highly recommend this game if you haven't played it.
Directly through his head without batting an eye.
I'm actually not sure how far we would get tonight.
Well, he was already passed out when it happened.
So
Probably
I don't.
not terribly far.
Yeah, I don't remember a lot of what to do in this game.
I remember some of the funnier puzzle solutions, and that's about
As soon as Toby
it.
gets that battery working, we're set.
I'm afraid not.
That was the big appeal of LucasArts games. They always had really creative
Your friend in the future needs
and
power too.
hilarious puzzle
Still
solutions.
alive.
Alive?
Get me out of here. I
Like, for instance, I really like how you get her out of that tree.
Got to go.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So let's go switch to. All right, time to go pick up everything that's not nailed down.
First step
That's
in
the
any
best
adventure
part.
game. And if it's a
Collecting
Sierra game... Oh, go ahead.
I just think collecting things has a certain appeal in any game.
Do you know Red
What I think is funny about adventure games is it makes you think about objects, just mundane objects in the world, in different ways. So something funny happened when I was a kid. I played a lot of these adventure games growing up because they were the main thing that were available on PCs. And I was driving, and my one of my side mirrors on my car like fell apart as I was driving. It was the weirdest thing. Like the mirror fell off, and it was dangling by a thread, and just banging against the side of my car. And so I pulled over, and I had nothing in my car to resolve this situation. I couldn't just drive with it dangling. And I ended up using plastic bags, like grocery bags, that I tied together into like a rope, and then tied it onto the mirror. And that allowed me to drive home. And I was like, "This is my adventure game creds right here, solving this problem."
Are there any Metroidvanias where your upgrades are just like everyday objects?
Oh, let me think. Not usually everyday objects. One of the things I like about Chasm is that all of the upgrades are kind of mundane, like shoes and stuff like that. You get one upgrade that's magical, but the rest of them are like climbing gear and stuff like that.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was something I thought was neat.
Sorry, go on.
It's like a low fantasy game, which is kind of rare with a game that's similar to Castlevania anyway.
Yeah, because with a lot of Metroidvanias, they'll just have that double jump even though it doesn't make sense, just because it's a common upgrade.
Well, that was the one magical exception in Chasm.
Oh, yeah.
Of course you have to have the double jump. It's like a staple.
But, you know, in the... Like, you usually don't think about the upgrade as an object existing in the particular game that you're playing. You just think of it as the double jump.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hello,
A lot of games get pretty creative with how the double jump
up,
looks,
Cole?
like aesthetically.
Cole.
Like I really like how you get the bat wings with Alucard, for instance, for the original
Why don't you build
Metroidvania
a
double
fire?
jump.
Well, I keep asking.
Yeah, like visual when it gives you the double jump, it's just like now you can double jump.
In a lot of games, yeah. Suddenly double jump. Like Hollow Knight did a good job. You had the little moth wings, which is very thematic.
He's going to give the
I like the rainbow wings and Bloodstained.
I don't get any respect
It's cool when they give it a little bit of an oomph.
It is. This isn't quite the same, but I liked how there was an early on in Portrait of Ruin, how there's a jump ability where you jump off your partner. Even though
yeah,
you get
yeah.
a double jump later, and it's
Then it
still
ruins
relevant
that.
though.
I think there's a couple of occasions where jumping off your partner is good, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, there are a few jumps where you need to jump off your partner and then do a double jump.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about character switching this week is because I just got done playing Owlboy last week, and it does character switching.
whoa.
And
Very much like
it's frustrating to me when I see a character switching system that seems to bring the game down.
like the
And Owlboy is one of those, I think. Like, it feels like the game is making concessions in order to allow the character switching to exist, instead of having the character switching and coming up with interesting ways that it can enhance the gameplay. What are your thoughts on Portrait of Ruins? I think your overall opinion on Portrait of Ruin is that it's not your favorite Castlevania master, is that correct?
That is correct.
But on the character switching specifically, what's your opinion on that?
I like the character switching. I think it's pretty interesting. It's not super punishing to have both characters out, but if you're just exploring, because when the other character gets hit, it drains some of your magic, and that's usually really easy to come by. I like that it doesn't just drain your health.
I think that was one of the cool things about that particular implementation of character switching is that you can actually have both the characters on the screen at the same time.
Yeah, if you don't, then it's a lot less interesting, because you just suddenly have slightly different abilities or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, it's basically like Dawn of Sorrow, where you could have two sets of skills for Soma, and you push a button to switch between the two. Effectively, that's what Portrait of Ruin is. In fact, it's even the same button as that ability switching button, except that the difference is that each character has their own exclusive powers. So theoretically, it's a downgrade to what Aria of Sorrow had, but more interesting from a thematic standpoint.
It's the one good thing about the game.
I think I used Jonathan almost that entire game.
Most people say that. I used Charlotte as much as I could. I like Charlotte. She did nice, good burst damage.
I switched between them depending on my needs. Usually for like killing anything, I would just charge up a spell,
Hey, that's a left-handed hammer, you know.
and then it would just destroy everything in front of me.
For my ungrateful
And I guess usually for most bosses, I also did that. But for sometimes it's better to have
What is it?
a big melee weapon.
Sure.
Of course I do.
Plus, I think Jonathan was the only one that had sub-weapons that could level up, and throughout the game, he gradually basically outclassed Charlotte. I think early game, mid game, Charlotte's good, and then by the end game, Jonathan kind of just takes over.
Do you know Ben Franklin?
And then Charlotte's kind of relegated to buffing Jonathan as a secondary power.
He has the stupidest idea about glasses with one red lens.
Yeah, I think I just generally have a problem where I don't use magic as much as I should in games because it's generally kind of clunky, like it has long cast times. I like being more mobile when I'm playing.
What are you doing?
I'm inventing, you simpleton. What
I can
does it
see
look
that.
like I'm doing?
Plus, Jonathan's really good. The Belmonts are usually pretty powerful characters.
It's a new size.
Well, technically he's not a Belmont, he's essentially the same thing.
Geometry.
Well,
Imagine if stamina bars worked like magic bars and they replenished extremely slowly, but they were large.
I think it depends on what powers you're using with that stamina bar. Obviously, you couldn't have like the regular attacks based off of that, unlike a certain game. Oh, we've already talked about Demon Souls. Unlike Demon Souls. Anyway, in Owlboy's case, it was awkward to say the least to switch between characters all the time.
it's covered with plants and junk.
Like one character had like a pistol that was useful at range, and then like your other character had a shotgun that did large bursts of damage, which would be superior in every way in every situation, except that it had like a 5 or 6 second cooldown. It was an insanely long
I
cooldown.
guess this is George Washington.
And so you would switch to that character, fire the shotgun, and then you'd have to switch back to get to the pistol. And it was just, it felt like it would have been just better if you had if that switch button was fire the shotgun, and then you just use your regular pistol normally, like if you had multiple weapons. It didn't feel good to switch between the characters. And then once you got a third character, it was even more awkward to
Old-fashioned lie.
flip between the characters to get to the weapon you actually wanted to use.
It's a good thing I finished.
And in my opinion, that is the poor method of implementing character switching.
Founding fathers like they used to.
Yeah, like
That sounds awful.
I kind of like the way the new Shantae did some of the character transforms. Like the one where it's just like you press the dash button and now you're the form that can dash and wall climb.
I told you guys
That sounds
I'll
way
do
better
like
than how it
this.
was
I'm working
in
on
Risky's
it.
Revenge.
Yeah,
Hey, chill. Take
the
your
the thing
time.
that I didn't like though is that most of the forms weren't very useful generally.
Yeah, Risky's Revenge
I've
actually
got
had the same
another
problem.
design change for the flag.
Well, didn't Risky's Revenge have it's where you had to like do a dance and then you transformed after the dance was over?
Yeah, you had to dance for like at least a second.
How about a
Like her
skull
butt had to
like
sway at least
scorpions
once
in
before
its
you let go
mouth?
of the button, and that was what transformed. So yeah, not only was
What the heck? At this point,
were the
I don't
forms
think
not
anything,
terribly
just cut it
useful
open.
in many situations, but you also
Look
had to
at
go
it
through
on the
that
table,
slow,
and I'll look
laggy
at it when I'm done with this
transformation
job.
to do it.
Yeah, and we saw me playing Demon's Crest like 4 weeks ago, where I was pretty much constantly changing forms.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem with that one was you had to hit the pause button every time you did it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Master and I at least agreed that the different forms in that game could have been maybe consolidated at least a little bit.
Yeah.
It's funny though because like Monster Boy, have either of you played Monster Boy yet?
Adventures were in here.
No.
Hey, I've got to put them somewhere.
I played that.
I didn't feel like it was as bad in that game, like having to switch for specific powers. And I think part of the reason for that is that a lot of the forms had overlap, like a lot of them still use the weapon.
Nice teeth. Thanks. I paid quite a bit for them.
Yeah, like there were some forms in Demon's Crest that weren't very good at combat compared to the other forms. Like when you got the Time Crest, it's just like, oh, it's time for combat, time for the Time Crest.
I can't remember, did Monster Boy have fast
Horses
switching?
could talk.
It had the wheel, I remember that.
Just never
Yeah, I'm
did.
pretty sure it had a radial menu, so you didn't have to like
You mean
go to a
horses
pause
have
screen,
stuck
but
me my whole life?
I think it paused the game while you did it.
Yeah, it was effectively similar. But maybe a little bit better? I don't know, less lag time, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't have to load the full like sub screen.
Hey, welcome, Silverant. We're playing an unusual Metroidvania this week.
Question is, which one's stuffed and which one's
And talking
the
about
real
character
one?
switching. Another game that didn't do character switching very well was Omega Strike, and it had the same problem where it had one button for character switching, but you had 3 different characters, so to get to the character that you wanted, you had to push the button and cycle through them until you got to the one you wanted. And it kind of slowed the game down a lot. And another issue the game had, because technically Julius mode in Dawn of Sorrow was the same way, but in Dawn of Sorrow, it was more like every character held their own, and most of them could access any, like a movement upgrade type situation. Whereas in Omega Strike, you constantly had to switch characters to basically break down specific barriers in order to progress through the game. And one of the characters could double jump, so basically you played as that character all the time.
So when you character switch in that game, if you double press the button, would it immediately switch to the third character? Or would it just switch once and then you'd have to wait for that one to switch, and then you'd press it again and then it would switch to the third one?
You had to see it switch to the other character, although if I remember correctly, it didn't switch super slowly, but you did have to cycle through it.
Yeah.
I think it should have had the shoulder buttons be the switches, so you could, just memorize which direction the character you want is from the character where you're at. Which is technically how Barbarian did it with its different powers, although it didn't technically have character switching.
Did you come from? The future. Kind of spooky sounding, ain't it? Ooh, the future. I'm from
Yeah, I
the
guess
future. Look out.
switching forms and switching characters mechanically is the same, but thematically is pretty different.
Yeah, well, what's the advantage of either?
If I unload in here.
What do you think?
Actually, we are well supplied with medium.
Like, why would a developer want to have... let's start with character switching. Why would a developer want to have character switching?
Hope I haven't jostled you.
I think it just depends on how many characters you want to develop. Like, if you just want to have the one character that you want to develop, then you would use form switching. If you had multiple ones, then you'd use character switching.
That's true, though it would be quite easy to make the second character just some random NPC who helps you out in the story, like many other Castlevania games.
Use it for what?
I think for the most part, Castlevania, they don't have a lot of characters, and their supporting cast is usually at least as interesting as the main character. Maybe part of the problem is that the main character isn't always interesting, but...
Yeah. A lot of times with Castlevania, you just have some other person or multiple people wandering about the castle doing, a similar thing that you are, and I imagine it would be incredibly easy for the narrative if you just had them travel together and you could switch between them. Maybe not right away, though.
Yeah, I think that from a story perspective, having different characters is useful. I think that was what Owlboy was going for by having multiple characters. And the main draw of the game for me is the game's story. Speaking of switching characters, this is that situation where the character is left exactly where you
the switch for the sludge-o-matic machine.
Where you left them.
There, it's off. But it's too late now.
What did the sludge-o-matic machine do? What was its purpose?
I don't know. Like you mean, what does it do in the game, or what? Why does it exist?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it exists so that the tentacle can go crazy, but what was the mad scientist's goal in making it originally?
I assume that
it's on the other side of the window.
Some of his experiments produce waste, and that's used to get rid of it.
That would be logical. Okay, so character switching allows you to have characters in the story that travel around with so you can travel around as a party, and that makes it useful because then you can have conversations between those characters and develop a story that way. I can understand that, and that makes a lot of sense. But what about form switching? What is form switching? Why is that advantageous from a game design perspective? Why would you choose that over just having abilities that you press a button for?
I think for this, looking at the Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, and by extension, I guess Castlevania 3.
Yeah.
So each of the different characters in those games, they have different attributes that make handling them unique and traversing the level. And you can't just have an upgrade that, you can't condense them into one character because their attributes are different and, not necessarily better.
Their jump height and things like that.
Yeah, like, it can lead to having to make meaningful choices.
I mean, besides...
You can also... Sorry, go on.
Well, besides jump height, though, a lot of them, like Miriam's whip, you could just have a weapon switching system, or the sub-weapons that are unique to each character could just be a sub-weapon switching system instead.
You could, but also having different health bars for your different characters means that managing them, it's interesting.
It's stuck to the
Probably
floor.
more interesting than just having one health bar.
I agree with that, and that's definitely a design that's specific to Curse of the Moon. I don't remember Castlevania 3 as much. I think it had separate health bars. Did it? I can't remember. For some reason, I remember that, like, if you were playing Sifa, if she died, you were just dead at that point. It was just a different option for a character. They didn't really have a whole lot of depth there. I think it was basically the same as starting the game in Richter mode in Castlevania 3, but you had the option of switching between characters at any point. Whereas Curse of the Moon kind of took it to the next step and added that dynamic to it.
Sorry, my mom told me never to smoke.
Hey, if I listened to my mom, I wouldn't be where I am.
Can you switch it to the normal graphics or the original graphics real quick?
Yourself, boy.
You can tell that that's a gun a whole lot better in the original graphics than you can in the remake, I think. Like if you switch back to the...
It looks almost real.
Yeah, it doesn't really have a defining... I suppose it blends in with the background because there's another silver thing behind it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that doesn't really help. There is a highlight option in this game.
That does not help. Does it have more of an outline in the classic version?
I'm not sure if... Yeah, it didn't have highlighting.
It definitely has more shading on it.
It kind of sticks out.
Yeah.
Plus when you
Like,
hover over things, it...
Yeah, like the background elements have like more colors to them, whereas this is just like 4 colors. It's kind of like this is an NES graphic, and the backgrounds are like Super NES, where it just has more palette.
I mean, looking at it, it does look like it has a low amount of detail, but I don't know, the shape of it seems more defined, whereas this is just like, is that a magnet with a stick coming out of it? Like, it doesn't look like... It doesn't conjure up the image of gun to me.
The lower pixel count you can get works for the art style.
Come on, I won't hurt
better
you.
than this. Because with the lower amount of pixels, you can have a corner or something be 1 pixel, and that's like a sharp edge. But with this, when adapting the art style, they made everything look, I guess, soft. And it's harder to make out features like that gun as a result.
I was gonna make a joke at the start of the stream that this was a Christmas game because the tentacle is slightly in the shape of a Christmas tree.
I would love a Christmas tentacle.
I'm sure that you could probably get something like that set up. It's a good thing he didn't like go in through the vents.
Yeah, I don't know why it doesn't.
What's up, Silverant? So, I think we've kind of established a lot of the advantages of having multiple characters, like Curse of the Moon. You have the different health bars and things like that. But what about form switching specifically?
Well, much like this game, 2 of your forms could be in different areas at the same time. Switching between them could allow you to fast travel.
That's an interesting idea, that rather than having 3 separate characters, it's like 3 parts of his mind. You know, the idea of having, I don't know about 3 areas, but the idea of having a character in a real world, but he also has like anxiety or PTSD or something like that, and he has like this mental world that he has to conquer, is another idea that would work really well in a Metroidvania, I think. Especially if like he had 2 different genres going, like his brain is a Metroidvania that he has to overcome his mental handicaps. And then like the real world is like a third-person shooter or something. That could be really interesting, I think.
It's pretty darn cold.
So I think the reason why Demon's Crest had the multiple forms is because the idea is cool more than anything. Like the other 2 Gargoyles games, Gargoyles Quest games, I think you just got upgrades for Firebrand, right? Have you played both of them, Cauldrath?
What other game? Sorry?
Gargoyles Quest?
So you get the same Firecrest upgrades, where you get like Claw and Twister, Dragon's Breath, and Buster. But not any of the other crests.
I just want to point out that this guy's bed is like extraordinarily creepy. Like, what's going on in his room?
It's also a vibrating bed.
Oh, great.
Insert a dime and have a good time is what it said earlier.
Yeah. So obviously I need to get this sweater.
I can't pick it up. That guy is lying.
I don't remember what the advantage of the sweater was. Oh, I remember. Yeah, okay. You give it to the hamster.
That makes perfect sense.
It will if he gets that far. But besides just being cool, like you want to have your character transform, like is there any mechanical advantage to having form changes?
I mean, if you have a lot of like completely different move sets, it would be like it's probably better to have different characters, perhaps presets of just one character to switch between, rather than just having some permanent upgrade.
Yeah,
that's probably the idea.
It reduces the amount of complexity for like the button usage for a given form.
Why'd this guy try to kill himself?
He's depressed that nobody wants to use his novelty inventions.
Gee, you look depressed.
I wouldn't mind a novelty invention that could go through my ears and not kill me.
The gun was a good tip-off.
I'm having a crisis here, a warehouse of anguish. I'm a novelty goods designer by trade. I've come up with some fabulous ideas. The exploding lollipop, itching powder gum, and reverse 3D glasses, to name a few. The problem is, no one likes my designs. I send them all over the world and no one responds. I just wish someone would say they liked one just once. Oh, woe is me.
I like your design ideas.
Well, I didn't mean you.
I've met people like this.
Never mind.
So I think that's a good point. And I think that's probably how Monster Boy and its predecessor, Wonder Boy 3, handled things.
What are you doing up here?
Well, I couldn't
And technically that's what Shantae does as well.
And I'm afraid of what he'll do if he
That
catches
is true.
me. If Dr. Fred doesn't find me first.
Yeah, there is always the question of whether it would be better if you just consolidated all of the abilities each of the forms have into one single form.
Now, I've only played 2 of the Shantae games, but I definitely liked the Pirate's Curse more, and that was the one where she just had all of her powers together.
Yeah, that's because she lost her form switching ability, which is like the signature thing of the series.
Sure. I think that the pirate powers were nice and thematic for that game anyway.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it, but I was thinking more
I do like the idea
about
that
politics.
the powers work quickly. Like, for instance, I wish that Symphony of the Night did that with the wolf form. Like, made it more like Samus's speed, where you run long enough and then you just transform into a wolf. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Instead of the way they had it, it's mostly that when you push the transform button, they had to do that slow animation, and then you started at 0 for your speed. If you could transform while Alucard was moving and keep that momentum and just get faster with the wolf form, I think it would have been a much more useful form.
Yeah, or like you could transform into the bat by like jumping, and then while you're in midair, holding the jump button, something like that.
Yeah. So Silverin asks if any of the Trines are a Metroidvania. And I've only played the first one myself.
Volume, man, volume.
I think the cool thing about Trine is that it had the 3-player option,
We're pulling out all the stuff.
which I think would be cool. Like if Curse of the Moon had multiplayer, although that would make the game completely imbalanced. But I think it would work for like an Igavania, maybe.
But we have a huge following in the club scene.
Wouldn't necessarily make it unbalanced if it had multiplayer. I mean, everyone's pretty powerful, but you know, one of you falls down the hole, one of you misses that jump, and you're down a character.
Sure. But then you have to give the players something to do while they're not, when they get dead. Otherwise, they get bored quickly when they die or frustrated and don't want to play anymore.
Good luck in saving the world,
Yeah.
man.
That's one of the reasons why Among Us works so well, is that even when you're dead, you can still do your tasks and whatever.
It looks too heavy for me to pick up.
No idea about that.
Oh, you haven't played that one yet?
No.
It's fun. We should do it sometime.
Okay.
Wow. This is loud.
I'm not really a fan of social deception games. I don't like lying to my friends for fun.
I'm really bad at it. I like how this is the puzzle. Just knock over the speaker.
Tentacle looks disappointed.
Whew.
Wish I was a sentient tentacle.
Looks comfy, right? That's that question.
Would you need to have arms or not?
I mean, arms would be nice, but...
What do you need arms for when you got these giant suctions on your face?
Hey, do I know you?
Yeah.
Wait, what about Lava Lana, Silver?
I broke into your house 5 years ago, kidnapped your hamster, broke into your piggy bank.
Nope, doesn't ring a bell.
Oh.
But I can't remember.
I mean,
about that period anyway.
depends on my
My
mood,
friend
if I have any emotion
something
with my voice or not.
to me back then, but I'm blocking out.
Does it have anything to do with a hamster?
All I know is that I used to have a cute white hamster with spots, and now I have a cute brown one with no spots. It used to worry me, and the nightmares would come. I'm much better now. I don't have those bad thoughts anymore. Now I collect stamps.
I love the characters in this game. Oh,
So how do you guys feel about Metroidvanias that have a lot of collecting useless things like lore?
Or money?
Lore can be interesting.
Okay, money doesn't count. I mean collectibles.
What happened to
I think a good example would be the blasphemous body parts. I never sat down and like read all the lore. I probably like one of the things that I'm doing in this playthrough that we've been doing for the past 8 weeks or whatever.
What was the horrible sound?
is kind of trying to understand the story or the plot of the game a little better.
I hear it in my
And there is so much lore on all of the objects that it feels overwhelming if I wanted to try and sit down and puzzle it all out.
I mean,
I only played the demo, even though I've owned the game for a while now. But, I mean, having a lot of lore seems interesting, or at least change of pace, I guess, from games that don't really have anything.
Too excited. Bye.
So Silveran says those body parts are basically Kickstarter rewards, which is probably true.
Yeah.
And as far as like my interest in collecting them, I don't really care that much. I haven't like sat down and actually collected them all. It doesn't really entice me. One of the fun things about a Metroidvania game is that if it's a true Metroidvania in the sense that it follows after Metroid or Symphony of the Night, every collectible has some kind of meaning. In Metroid, it directly affects your power. Oh, look, there's the Maniac Mansion. Do you have to play it on this tiny screen the whole time?
I'm not sure.
Jeepers.
Okay, good. No, you don't.
Oh, and apparently this does work. How do I get out of here, though?
Uh-oh.
Okay. I don't want to actually do that right now.
You're just able to play through the whole game in this game? It's interesting. Is it the same on the original?
I think so.
That's nice.
Collecting things for the sake of collection isn't interesting at all.
Collecting things for lore is like if you're looking forward to reading about the world, that could be an incentive. And it could even be useful information that would increase your knowledge and therefore increase your power.
Yeah.
Perhaps even more so than 5 extra missiles would in Metroid.
I think it has that potential.
Tentacle from conquering the world.
Really? How nice.
And then there's Rain World, where you have to pick up the lore and then have to take it all the way across the world to get it translated so that you can understand what it is.
Well, he's still upset about
The horrible, deadly world.
Well, I'm going to be the one that mentions Dark Souls this time, but that one actually did a good job with the lore, where it was like they attached the lore to the descriptions of all of the items.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the
Yeah, and the items were useful items that also had lore.
Yeah. So it was
different.
They didn't have that separation where you like got lore items and you got useful items. It's just like, here's some useful items that also have lore.
Yeah, I do love, like, I get why some people wouldn't like it, but I'm definitely a fan of that way of presenting lore, because it means you can, like, for the people who just browse wikis, you can hide lore in rare drops that aren't really important, but also, you know, those, you can put lore that is relevant on items that are relevant.
The family finances.
Technically, Blasphemous does the same thing. All of its items also have lore attached to them. Part of the problem with Blasphemous is that they also mix in the item description within that lore, so you kind of have to read through the lore to get to the item description. So something that Dark Souls does is, if there is any additional mechanics attached to the item besides just the stats, it'll list it separately from the lore, so you can distinguish that pretty quickly.
This is quite an array of gadgetry you have here.
Yes, it's the best surveillance system in the state.
Well, that's the thing about Dark Souls, is that the depth of the story is as much as you want to put the work into it. And it's the same way with Rain World and other games that use a similar style of storytelling. Another factor is the environmental storytelling. You can infer things based on where things are located, or just the way the environment looks. One example of that is the hole in the ceiling where you find Oscar in Dark Souls 1 suggests that he was bashed through the ceiling by the demon on top of the building. It's cool stuff like that kind of gives you an idea without slapping your face with it with like a cutscene or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of intentionality about that kind of design, and I really value that in a video game. When everything like makes sense in the environment, and it's not just some generic video game level like so many games are.
Yes, and I think that Metroid did a pretty good job with that. even back in the 90s. Metroid 2 and Super Metroid both. Now, they were both alien worlds, so they had a lot of freedom in how they constructed that environment, so it could be constructed in a very gamey way. But even with that done, there was a lot of storytelling that went on with the environment.
Yeah, I guess that's why so many Metroidvanias are just like in a series of tunnels, because that lets you have an interesting game design while also not being totally nonsensical.
Right.
As like an actual environment.
That's the convenience of theming. It's sort of like using zombies versus using cultists or terrorists. Like, for instance, Shadow Complex, there's not really a huge difference between it and Super Metroid as far as like the way the enemies behave, but they're all sentient human beings, which we would assume would theoretically have feelings and fears just like a normal person would, and yet they throw their bodies at you with no regard for their own lives, even though you're mowing them down, and there is no effect to their morale. And it feels awkward as a result. Whereas if you just had them be zombies, then it's like, oh, they're zombies. Of course they're going to act that way.
That is true. Ah, that was a controller button prompt. You've just revealed your method of playing the game to the stream.
It showed the controller controls at the beginning of the game, so that was the first hint.
Was the stream started then?
I like how he falls asleep and does things like sign contracts. But that convenience of theming applies to the level design as well. For instance, Castlevania gets away with everything it does because Castlevania is magical and the castle shifts around every time because it's a living being or whatever. And so there isn't as much it needs to do to make it feel like a place, because the logic the game world gives you allows it to be what it is.
Right, but they still opt for just really boring long hallways full of copy-paste enemies, and like, why? You have the worst of both worlds.
Okay, well, the setup in Castlevania allows them to do whatever they want.
Allows them to be lazy, I suppose.
We could debate on whether or not the actual level design has merits. I think there are parts in, like, Symphony of the Night, I think does a pretty good job overall. There's a few hallways that stick out to me, like specifically the hallway between the library and the tower. It's just a long, boring hallway with enemies. But that's on my list of level design setups that you should use very sparingly. On that same token, though, sometimes the long hallway can still be interesting. I mean, the classic Vania games were very much basically just hallways in the same way.
Well, classic Vanias are a fundamentally different way of playing the game. So, I disagree with your comparison, sir.
It depends on... So, Cauldrath, you want to explain why we just painted the kumquats red?
Because George Washington will only chop down cherry trees, and apparently this is now a cherry tree. Because as soon as you make a kumquat red, it is indistinguishable from a cherry.
Kumquats also cluster like cherries do, right?
Yes.
I think it depends on how the Metroidvania is designed, Master. Like, for instance, Unworthy is all about dodging and timing and telegraphing, and having a hallway with a good hard enemy is no more interesting on two planes as it is, on one plane. Whereas in Castlevania, the Igavania games are definitely about movement, so those long hallways stick out more as being tedious because there's no actual challenge in getting through it. And I think that's also how the classic Vania games differentiate themselves, is that going through that level is a puzzle in itself rather than just a hallway with enemies in it.
Plus, when you have just a hallway, it's likely you'll have to go through that hallway multiple times. And that's much, much different from just going through something once.
Right.
Like, you can have something be kind of tedious, but if you only go through it once, you really don't remember it that well. But then if you have to backtrack through it, it's much more memorable as being awful. At least I think so.
Yeah, I think the long hallways are there so that they can try to like emphasize the combat. But it's not really like it's a lot of it's a platformer, and taking away from that kind of lessens it.
I think sometimes those long hallways are also because they want everything to be connected, and they made this section and designed it well. They made this section and designed it well, but now we have to connect it, and all we have is this space right here. So now it is a long hallway, which is, you could call it poor planning.
Guess one could call it lazy design.
I feel like the Souls-like Metroidvania games like Salt and Sanctuary can get away with the hallways better because there is such a focus on the combat and there is a difficulty to every single enemy that you come across.
Yeah, that's the difference, is that everything is difficult.
Right.
But in Castlevania, it's usually easy and boring, and even if it isn't, it usually ends up just being tedious because you're fighting an enemy who does one attack and they slowly walk towards you, and you gotta hit them once and then back up and just do that 20 times. That's where most of the difficulty is, apart from the bosses.
Right.
In any anime.
Does it have anything to do with...
Yeah, especially when by the time we get to Bloodstain, enemies are more like piñatas, and you're looking for prizes more than you are addressing them as a challenge.
Yeah, I think that's part of why it was so important that Castlevania has so many different enemies. Otherwise, it would just be even more repetitive.
Right, it's already not interesting, so you distract people with, oh,
with
look
novelty.
at that pretty sprite. Wow, that's so weird, and then people are a little happier.
I'm getting the feeling that we need to have a Castlevania fan on these streams. Because I think that we have 3 people here who appreciate the design of Metroid more than they appreciate the design of Castlevania. I like Castlevania. I like basically all of the games in the series, including the one that people don't like, Harmony of Dissonance.
Well, I still think that the Castlevania games are better than like the general like slew of indie Metroidvanias.
They're
like,
above the average.
I'm sure Master will disagree with this, but I think like Ori is in that like high tier that's about the same as Castlevania.
I mean, on Castlevania, like, I mean, they're pretty average, but you kind of know what you're going to get out of a Castlevania game. Like, they're all the same game. Sometimes it, feels like. So, you're going to get a traditional... Well, I mean, okay, you don't actually know that. But usually Castlevania games are just sort of a traditional Metroidvania. And you're going around and you're sorting things.
So Melphis says that Bloodstained is solid. And I agree. I think that Bloodstained's very good. I actually like Bloodstained a lot. I think that it has some untapped potential, and I'm hoping that the DLC addresses that. Based on what what DLC has come out so far, I don't think it will in the long run, but I think that there's a huge potential for it being better than Symphony of the Night if they put the effort into it.
Castlevania is kind of like the television show Friends. It's not good, but I mean it's there and it's watchable.
Okay, so I'm going to go to my door and stop all the people with the pitchforks and torches from coming in and stopping the stream. You need to play Order of Ecclesia. I think Order of Ecclesia... I think I gave Order of Ecclesia the wrong score in my review, and I may go back and change it, but... I don't know. I bet if I play it again, I'll probably be like, yeah, no, I think the score is right, because it does have a lot of those long, boring hallways, but it's also a lot more difficult than your standard Igavania game.
Here for you.
Which gives it kind of that classic Vania feel
Oh well.
for a lot of it.
I mean, I don't hate Castlevania. Before you
Brilliant.
go around saying I hate Castlevania.
I was going to go around saying that.
We do know you hate Ori, but not
Yeah,
Castlevania.
that's obvious.
I think we probably have 3 grades of Ori love in this stream. We have I adore it. Cauldrath probably thinks it's decent or good, and then we have absolute hatred.
I think Ori 2 is like one of the best Metroidvanias, but Ori 1 is just like not that great. Like I don't feel like there's any reason to play Ori 1 when Ori 2 exists.
I actually like Ori 1 more.
See, everyone who talks about Ori, they either strongly prefer the first one or the second one, and I'm not sure why.
I need to replay
thinks they're equal.
I need to replay the first one. I should probably play them back to back so I can more. I can compare them with a more critical eye, I guess. But one of the things
Sorry, go on.
No way. I'm not touching
go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Well, people who dislike Ori 2 usually say that it's just generic and didn't have any of the things that made Ori 1 special. And then the people who don't like Ori 1 say that Ori 1 sucked and that those things that made it special were awful game mechanics.
I think it comes down to like Ori 2 has better combat, but it forces you to do it more. And it's a question of whether you would prefer having more, like being forced to do more better combat, or just like not having to do combat at all.
Right, and that's kind of where I'm at. And Silverin asks if Ori 2 is on the Game Pass. I believe so. I would have to Google that to confirm, but I've heard it's on the Game Pass. But yeah, that's where I'm at with Ori 1 versus Ori 2. I really like Hollow Knight. I think it's one of the best games ever made. But if you don't like combat, but you would like a game that has really solid and really good platforming that gives you a lot of creativity in how you address the situation.
Oh, never mind.
Then Ori 1 is a good recommendation to those people. Then Ori 2 comes along and adds all that combat and makes you do all of it. It's no longer unique as a recommendation that I can give to people. It's basically just like Hollow Knight, except in the sense that it has combat and platforming, except that the combat's worse and the platforming's better.
Babies on me.
Yeah, Melphis Belmont says that Ori 2 has some serious flare issues, causing tons of visibility issues, and therefore the platforming is weaker and the story is weaker. I agree that the gaudiness of the graphics is kind of distracting sometimes. Is the platforming weaker? I need to play the two back to back. I watched somebody else's review of Ori 2, and he said that they fixed all the platforming problems with the original, and I was like, I don't remember that. But I played the Ori 1 like a year before I played Ori 2, or maybe 2 years, so the distance on my memory isn't strong enough to, or my memory isn't strong enough to really make a direct comparison. As far as the story being weaker, I think that Ori 2 has a better ending. Personally,
I bet the ending of Ori 2 annoyed a lot of people.
I don't know.
Like I wasn't that big of a fan of it.
I kind of like endings like that.
Yeah.
Personally, we can't talk about it because of spoilers, but I think another good comparison is Metal Gear Solid 2. You can interpret it as a cliffhanger, or you could interpret it as a standalone thing that is supposed to be open for interpretation.
Here, perhaps these are
Interesting.
your keys. Where?
So I have a mini rant. Are you ready?
Let's go for it.
Keep the crowbar.
Okay, so
Thank you, Masked Man.
you know, people tend to criticize,
Maybe this one.
say, gaming journalists or judges or whatever about how they focus on graphics over, you know, gameplay of substance. But then you look at Steam reviews of games like Ori, or there's this retro shooter called Proteus that has a similar problem in that the graphics are super distracting for gameplay. And people just overwhelmingly love the graphics in both of these games, and I don't understand it. Like, people have got this double think going on where they judge other people for thinking good graphics are like a quality to look for in a game, but then their quirky, you know, good-looking graphic game, everybody loves it, and I don't understand.
I don't know.
Because
Like, is it an aesthetic thing over just like a big budget thing?
I think it's more just like they want to act like they're not affected by the graphics, but they actually are.
So there's a reason why I never, I don't usually talk about graphics in my reviews, and that's because a person can look at a game and decide whether or not they like the graphics without me saying a word.
If it's poorly animated, like I've seen some games that that look really good in screenshots, but then they're really poorly animated.
Plus, if the graphics make gameplay incredibly annoying, sometimes it's hard to judge that from a screenshot.
Right, and that's the only time I bring up graphics is when I feel like the animations are the reason why the gameplay is brought down. Like, for instance,
Ori 2 might look good because, you know, the screenshot's pretty, but then you get into combat and it's super flashy and annoying. I assume. I haven't played it.
I think the best example of where graphics matter, and you can prove it, is in the remake of Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap. If you play it on the original graphics setting, the controls feel slippery. And I constantly was running into enemies. Even though it's a melee game, I would try and walk up to an enemy and I would bump into them because your character kind of slides toward them. They don't stop on a dime like you would expect them to. With the graphical upgrade, though, they added animations that they were slipping. You could see a visual indicator that that's the way they were moving. When you turn around, they kind of had a slip animation. And it felt better because the game was conveying you that those physics. And it made the game a whole lot better. It feel a whole lot better to play as a result. It's really kind of uncanny. Like, the entire time I was playing the game, I was switching back and forth between the old and new graphics just to compare it. And also I played Wonder Boy and Monster World, which I think is Wonder Boy 4. And had the same problem where I kept slipping into enemies. And it's amazing how the graphics kind of address that issue, even though the physics were the same.
But as you can see, there.
It is interesting. Like, at the end of the day, graphics are made to give you something to interpret, so you know, so you can react to stimulus. And yeah, I don't have anything else to say about that.
This is one of my favorite puzzle solutions in the game.
Understand? I'm stuck in this.
Time paradox. Wait, she's stuck in the cement now, isn't she? There isn't a character unlock until you fix the cement problem, I think.
No, it's already there.
So Melphis is saying that in Ori 2 there are flashes of light when you hit enemies. There's a bright white. When you get hit, there's a bright white. When you bash, they are bright white. When you grapple, they are white blue. So easy to lose track of the bright white Ori sprite and all of that. And I agree. It's a little bit headache-inducing.
No one owns me.
This isn't super relevant, but the game I was referring to, Proteus, it's called the shooter. It has this very crispy looking pixel filter over everything. which isn't the worst, but the problem for me is that whenever you shoot anything, there's an incredibly obnoxious blood spray effect that just, if you're using a weapon that shoots quickly, it will cover the entire screen, and like you literally can't see through it. It's impossible. You're using like a minigun, and I don't understand how people just think this looks good.
Well, who are you?
And there's no setting to turn it down. You're stuck with it.
That's my wife Zedna and my son Ved.
I don't know. Sometimes the experience is more important to people than the mechanics. And I guess maybe they just like having pixel blood spraying all over their face.
Right. The gameplay is only like mediocre in that game too. You'd think people would... Yeah, you're right, Silver. It is due to Brutal Doom. There are just these certain people who will just play Brutal Doom, and those people need to not play Brutal Doom. Okay, sorry, let's get back to Metroidvania.
Come on, Total Biscuit totally pushed Brutal Doom. Thought it was the greatest thing. Or was it Total Biscuit? I think it was Total Biscuit.
I don't know.
Didn't get in.
It looked fun to me.
It's a perversion of what makes Doom actually interesting to play, and it's like a parody of.
Well,
it's like the game that it's a game that could be in a television show where they're depicting a violent video game that's not actually real.
So I've been getting a stronger appreciation for Doom this past week. I've been basically running YouTube all the time while I've been working, because I'm working from home, and why not? So I'll have, like while I'm working, I'll have somebody's video playing in the background. And recently I've been watching Carl Jobst. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Oh.
He's a speedrunner who did GoldenEye, but he started covering just the achievements of speedrunning on his channel. And he does a lot of Doom videos. It sounds like you've heard of him.
Yeah, I've entered a few of his speedrunning. Actually, one of his speedrunning contests.
Oh yeah, he's had a few of those on his videos.
I was 2 numbers away from winning Doom Eternal, and it really made me mad because one of my friends was going to enter it, and then they didn't, and their number would have pushed me up.
Oh. He was grading on a curve, and your friend didn't help the curve. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it wouldn't have mattered anyways because the way random number generators work, but.
Oh, sure.
Anyways.
Yoo-hoo, Mr. Tentacle guy.
Yeah, have you played any of the... You played the Castlevania or the Metroid mods for Doom?
I haven't yet. I need to. I should do that on one of these streams sometime.
You should. Actually, this came to mind because I saw a post on the sub a few days ago about it. And I remembered, oh yeah, I was bugging Q to play those, and then I kind of forgot.
I'm distracted by the anatomy of these tentacles. Like if they have 3 stomachs, or what is this? Or all of those orifices mouths?
Well, one of them's clearly an eye.
Sort of, yeah. I mean,
assuming they can see and they don't just sense things around them. I mean, maybe it's just for intimidation purposes.
Just as I suspected.
What?
Yeah, I do need to play those Doom mods, though. Watching the mechanics of speedrunning and the depth that goes into them has really made me interested in trying to play Doom again. I haven't played it since like the 90s, really, so it'd be neat to give it another shot.
This makes me happy.
Unfortunately, the next stream that it's my turn to play, I'm going to be doing Gleamlight.
Oh God, no! Why? You agreed never to do that.
Because I promised that I would do that.
Oh. Just do it later.
Do it later. Doom now, Gleamlight later. But Gleamlight's only $10 on the sale this week. I have to do it. But no, I do need to do the Metroid Doom soon.
Tell me, Lieutenant, how do
you feel about humans? So it's interesting how how different mechanics can be good or bad for speedruns. Like the Castlevania Symphony of the Night backdashing being faster. It is faster, right? Like, do speedruns just spam that?
They have to cancel the lag on the dash using a shield, but yes, it is faster.
That seems incredibly tedious to do.
See, but I agree. But part of the appeal of it is that it does add a skill, like barrier to it.
Right. That's different from something like Super Mario 64's movement, which, you know, it's complex and you can do a lot of interesting things in levels.
But it's not repetitive.
But with, yeah, it's not repetitive. I guess if you're going for, you know, a long distance, there's a certain input combination you do to go as fast as you can, but it's different from... I think I read something about this recently. I don't remember where. But someone once said, maybe it was Albert Einstein, who knows, that if you're making, like, you don't want to make the most efficient way to do something super tedious. So you don't want to have backdashing being the fastest way to move.
Oh, what is the quote? I think I know the quote you're talking about. The, given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of everything.
Well, there is that quote. That's not the quote I was thinking of. But I mean, that does apply.
And yeah, I agree that so Melphis Belmont says that all speedrun dash tech is tedious. I was watching a video on bunny hopping for Quake, and that looks like the most annoying thing in the world to me. I would never want to speedrun Quake as a result.
Bunny hopping is... I mean, getting the inputs down could be annoying, but the thing with Quake is that the bunny hopping, like, it's very specific the way you build up speed. It's not just, you're not just pressing the jump button to suddenly go fast. You're air strafing and you have to time your jumps perfectly to, like, get over obstacles. You're going off of things.
That Carl Jopsky has a really good video on how to do it, or kind of the process. Uh-oh, did we just... Oh, had a little bit of lag on the stream there. I wonder how that translated into Twitch.
Interesting. Yeah, the bee hopping... I'd say that's different than something being tedious, like backdashing is. But it still is a tedious action that you're doing, so I do agree there. Like, I've never really attempted to B-hop in most games that have it, because it's annoying.
On the flip side, though, Super Metroid has incredibly impressive
Get back in there.
Movement options, in my opinion. Although technically, wall jumping, like wall climbing, is probably just as tedious as bunny hopping. The way they quickly change into ball form and all that stuff, or spark shining, looks amazing to me and seems a lot less tedious to pull off.
Come on, let's take
I disagree with saying wall jumping is as tedious as something like just repeatedly backdashing. Like, if you have something specific that you're doing, it's the same thing with, I mentioned earlier with Super Mario 64, even though you're still doing, like, the same movements over and over. It's interesting because you're using them with the environment in some way. With backdashing, it's just anything you're standing on, you just backdash. But with something like wall jumping, you need a wall there, and, you know,
it serves a purpose, and I think that's why I like it. I find it more interesting to watch a Super Metroid speedrun than I would looking at the most optimized Quake level, because bunny hopping was pulled off the best. I think part of the reason also it's more interesting to me is because I can comprehend what is going on to make it go faster in the case of Metroid. Whereas the bunny hopping, it's such on a technical level, the best speedrun versus, the second best speedrun doesn't look any different to me. Because it is all about execution of that dashing ability.
Yeah. A lot of Doom speedrunning, though, is incredibly RNG. Well, if you're doing it It depends on the mode that you're running. But most of them, if they have enemies, they're going to be very RNG dependent and not actually fun to run. But the movement itself is still fun enough, I suppose.
Yeah, that was one of the other videos Carl did was about why the categories with monsters or more monsters aren't as popular. And that's because the damage that you deal with your guns is apparently random in Doom.
Mr. Tentacle guy.
It's random, and the enemies, when they shoot you, how much damage they do is random. So, if you're optimizing, then you're probably running past a lot of enemies. Those enemies doing random amounts of damage to you at random times means the most optimal way to get through the level probably exposes you to a lot of danger. And if you have bad RNG, you just have to retry and hope for good RNG.
Yeah.
Yeah, UV max is what it's called when you have to kill all the enemies in a level and find all the secrets. Killing all the enemies is annoying when you have random damage or random spread on your shotgun.
Right.
Doom 2 is a bit better at it because the super shotgun is incredibly consistent.
Yeah, that was what he was talking about.
Okay. Sorry if I'm just telling you things you already know.
Sure, people on the stream don't know. But to bring it back to topical Metroidvania, do we want to talk about Cauldrath's Metroidvania requirements list? Is that what you would call it, Cauldrath?
It's like rules of thumb for designing them, mostly level design.
Oops.
Oh, by the way, I noticed the stream has been going on for a little while. When do you think we should switch to the randomizer?
It's not a requirement that we do it every time.
That's true.
He hasn't dressed as a tentacle yet. Do you have to cut the flag off, or how come you weren't able to take the flag?
She said she couldn't reach it, so I need to go get the crank.
Oh, okay. To bring it down.
Hey, get back.
What do the people in the stream think?
Don't escape again.
Yeah, if
What?
people watching want us to switch games, we can switch games. Otherwise, we can continue playing Day of the Tentacle.
Okay, Hugh.
I don't know how much everybody's been paying attention to the game as we've been talking. If you're really curious about what happens, then we can continue playing Day of the Tentacle.
I've been staring off to the left of the stream because I notice if I'm looking directly at the stream, I get distracted by the text.
I've had the same issue. Every once in a while something happens and like, oh. I'm noticing you have to get into this jail a lot in this rotation.
What?
Like, if you want to go outside, you have to be like, I want to go to the bathroom. If you want to go anywhere else, you have to be like, I don't feel good. So it's pretty tedious to, do anything.
So Silver and Melphis say they're not really watching the game at this point. So.
And we haven't really talked about the game much either, so...
Sure. Well, we brought it up because of character switching. I think this is a good example of character switching.
I'm going to get the last ability you get in the game.
This is the final ability upgrade right here? Okay.
Yeah.
So Silverin is waiting with bated breath on these game design rules that you had. So let's go ahead and get started on that to not keep him waiting. So rule number 1, you said when placing an ability gate, put it at the fork leading to an area rather than at the end of an area. Do you want to explain that one?
So that makes it so that you don't have to... so there isn't a linear backtracking area. You don't... Okay, so one of the things that can be really annoying is you go through a long corridor and then maybe there's a really difficult section there and then you run into an ability gate and then you have to backtrack through that whole section again. And you got literally nothing out of it other than the information that you have to have a certain ability to get through it.
That is awful. If it's at the end, if the ability gate is at the end of a dead end,
Yeah.
then to get to that item, you're going through that area a minimum of 4 times.
What is it you get after Kraid in Super Metroid? I don't remember off the top of my head because it was obviously rupees when we played it on the randomizer version, and now I don't remember what was there. Was that a power-up, or was that just like a E-tank or something?
Is that where you get speed?
I don't think so. How come I can't remember where you get speed in Super Metroid?
It's where you get speed in Zero Mission.
After Kraid?
I believe, yeah.
No one gets to this clock while I'm here. And unless I have to go chase down some escaped humans, I'm glued to this spot.
Rats.
Yeah, Mel, I think Cauldrath addresses that in one of his other rules. We should probably list them all before the stream ends.
We'll get through them. We have an hour left.
Yeah.
Okay, so Cauldrath, I noticed that once you started talking about your role and kind of explaining it, that this woman was staring at the screen for a minute and picking her ears. Did you want to switch to the randomizer so that you can focus more on the question?
Yeah, we should probably do that.
Okay, let me go ahead and switch that out.
Just in case we decide to continue this thing.
I am a big fan of Day of the Tentacle. It was fun seeing it again. I recommend that game.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'll play it when I get around to playing all the other point-and-click games I've been meaning to play.
Yeah, you should probably play Maniac Mansion first, even though it doesn't have a remake and it's like the old style of like select a verb and then you use it on something.
This is a tangent. Have you guys heard of Mystery of the Druids?
I have not.
Okay, maybe we'll talk about it later.
It's a dented old can.
It's a horrible
There's
but
a lot
amazing
here
point-and-click game.
Let's see, how do I exit the
Of
stream?
the Constitutional Convention, interred by Thomas
This button.
Jefferson, A.D.
I'm trying to exit the stream without exiting the chat. Alright. Let me know if you guys see the Super Metroid. You should be able to see it soon.
Alright. I'm gonna go and quit this then, if you have yours up.
Oh, right. We were in this ice temple. Ugh. It's still not showing. What's going on here? Oh, it's because I have it. Alright, it should show up.
That's the Mandalore video, isn't it, Mel?
What's going on here?
Oh no, did I quit playing too early?
No, you're good. How am I out of mana? Yeah, we're leaving this place. Is it showing Super Metroid? Okay, good. Or I guess it's not Super Metroid yet. We can get to that.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. I see the Zelda.
Alright, so I was going to go buy some potions because we have 2,000 gold and there's no reason not to, so that will make this dungeon a lot easier. I hope. So we'll go do that.
Not any less annoying, just easier.
Okay, so rule number 2, according to Cauldrath's list. Don't put, or so just to reiterate, since we had a little bit of a gap between rule number 1, rule number 1 was when placing an ability gate, put it at the fork leading to an area rather than at the end of the area. Rule number 2 is don't put an ability gate that requires a later ability right after an ability gate that requires an earlier ability with no reward between. I feel like that one's a little bit self-explanatory.
Yeah, but this one was there because of Environment Station Alpha did it a few times where it would have the ability gate, you get through it, and then there's literally nothing there for you besides, oh, you need another ability.
I'm trying to remember that when that happened. But I know what you're talking about. Unfortunately, I can't think of specific examples off the top of my head. So any other thoughts on that, Master, or should we move on to rule number 3?
I remember Harmony of Dissonance breaking those rules several times.
Harmony of Dissonance's biggest problem is it had the long, boring hallway, but it also had the annoying switchback. which is the other like level design thing that can be really annoying if done poorly.
What do you mean by switchback?
So you go into a room, and in order to make that room last longer, they make you go left and then right and then left and then right. You know, going back and forth.
Like a zigzag.
A zigzag, yeah, a switchback, or it's a time waster.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most amateur level design tricks that people use to make a level last longer, with the misunderstanding that longer is not necessarily more interesting.
So I think there's a lot of games where they intentionally make the game last longer with just like various forms of padding. Because a lot of people do rate games on how long they take to complete.
Right. So I'm learning, actually, I've been watching a lot of Red Letter Media. As I mentioned, I've been watching a lot of YouTube lately. A lot of movies did that as well, because I guess 90 minutes is the requirement for a movie, full-length feature movie. And so they'll do things like, one of their favorite phrases is they shoot the rodeo, where apparently one of the movies they watched, they literally shot a local rodeo and put it in the movie, like, just to pad the time.
Interesting.
So I guess that medium had that issue to a degree as well. Is there a shop in this town, or am I just crazy? Is it to the south? I haven't bought a potion in this game in so long because usually I just catch fairies, but we don't have the dang...
So the potions you buy from the witch.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I can fly over there. I need to get healed at some point too. I think there's a fairy fountain in this area, so let me go do that at least.
It's interesting that people, like, the way padding is, as people notice it more if a game is average or short length. Okay, maybe that's not true. But I think definitely the perception of something that's clearly padding can be changed a lot just depending on how it's presented.
So does the most perfect game ever, Hollow Knight, have any padding?
I feel like a lot of the enemies have more health than they really need to, and I consider enemies that have too much health to be padding.
Maybe
really
the enemies can be skipped?
Well, a lot of times they can't really be skipped because they're just too in the way.
Sometimes
there are
that's the case.
There are only two types of enemies that come to mind when I think of Time Waster and Hollow Knight.
So Melphis... Oh, sorry. Melphis says that he disagrees and that the too much HP is a separate issue from padding. Sorry to interrupt, Master.
I was just gonna say, they're just two particularly thick enemies in Hollow Knight. One of them's in the city, one of them's in a place on the map that's low.
Yeah, I remember the ones in the city, and I pogo jumped off of those guys most of the time.
Yeah, the one in the area that is low, it's not particularly skippable because it takes up the entire tunnel.
In general, if I've been through, the first time I go through an area, I kill everything, and then the second time I go through it, I look for every option I have to skip them. And sometimes I skip them the first time I see them. This is really bad in games where, okay, I did all of this and I didn't get my mana restored. What the heck?
Didn't you have a green potion?
I do have a green potion, but I don't want to waste it when... Oh my gosh. Those things eat your shields? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
That's like their whole thing.
Okay, if I remember correctly, I think this cave here might refill your mana, like there's pots or something. Oh, what? Oh, there's a bomb wall here anyway. Anyway, are we ready for rule number 3?
Sure.
Rule number 3, your levels should generally not have dead ends, especially not long ones. If they do, there should be some sort of reward there. And these fairies don't restore my magic.
Long dead ends are absolutely the worst. I mean, short dead ends, fine. But if you have a long dead end, at that point, like, why can't you just make it loop back? Or not loop back, but like, why can't you just make it connect to somewhere else? Like, there's no point in making a long dead end unless you just want to waste the character, unless you want to waste the player's time.
Yeah, at least make it a loop.
Yeah, or some kind of teleporter at the end or something.
Like, a lot of these are really obvious when you're thinking about them specifically, but they still happen a lot in games.
I actually don't run into the dead end problem very often with all the games that I played. Usually, developers are aware that dead ends are boring. And usually have some kind of shortcut, even when the game is kind of terrible. But every once in a while, they make you backtrack out of it. But even when they have that mechanic where you backtrack out, that's usually not a dead end without a reward. So I don't feel like this is a major issue that I've seen in games. Do you have an example of what game prompted you to put that on your list? I don't disagree; it shouldn't be on the list, but I'm just trying to think of how often it happens.
So dead ends with rewards happen fairly commonly, I feel like, but without rewards, the only game that I remember that happening in was Birth of a Hunter, where it was proc gen, and
I need to play that one.
Yeah, the procedural generation would sometimes generate dead ends that just don't have anything in them.
Yeah, that sounds like a roguelite problem.
But you can adjust your algorithm so that it doesn't let that happen.
Oh, interesting.
Why wouldn't they just make that a default setting? Like, is there anybody that wants that? Like, there's some options where I'm like, why isn't this just turned on, not in the first place? Like, for instance, the turning off QuickTime events. Why would you ever want them on?
Hey man, I don't kink shame.
People liked QuickTime events in the first God of War.
Did they? I remember that being something that people made fun of even back then.
Like, that was one of the major appeals of the game, I thought.
Was it? Yeah. That's strange. I wasn't like major gaming when God of War came out, so maybe I just missed that. QuickTime doors.
Quick timing. Sorry.
Go ahead.
QuickTime events aren't always terrible. I mean, a lot of times they're actually pretty tolerable, and it's only I'd say in like the lower, like the below average QuickTime events that I actually have a problem with, unless the game uses them a lot, or
like,
if you have to button mash.
QuickTime events do make it so it feels more like you're involved in something cinematic that you couldn't normally convey through gameplay.
Then games will just overuse them and put them in every cutscene and have a lot of cutscenes that are bad.
Yeah, it's kind of like everyone using mechanics from Dark Souls without knowing why they work.
What was the first game to do QuickTime events?
Oh shoot!
All of those like full motion video games.
Oh, that's probably true.
Like Sega CD games.
What made it popular though?
The first one I remember having QuickTime events, like, that was not one of those FMV games. Oh, you know what? I would say the first QuickTime event game would be Dragon's Lair, that was the entire game. You know which game I'm talking about, right?
That was a full motion video game.
Yeah, that's true. It was a Don Bluth game. Or I think he animated the whole thing. I can't remember. Do I go left here? Yes, this is the stupid staircase.
Oh yeah, if you go right, then it like blocks you in. So the first games that I remember like being AAA games that used QuickTime events that were like actually popular were God of War and Resident Evil 4.
Maybe
Dino Crisis 1, I think, had them. on the PlayStation.
By the
And-
way, I just have to point out, you getting those stairs in the first try was incredibly impressive.
I've been practicing all week. I actually haven't. You know, the fact that I got hit like 5 times in the moving floor room was a testament to that. I don't even remember you being here. What the heck? Skeleton out of nowhere club. Alright, so number 4. This is a long one, so I'm probably going to kill these guys and then read it. Make sure that the player feels rewarded when they solve a puzzle, find a secret, or complete a challenge. We're going to see if I can blind kill these jellyfish while I read this. Giving them 50 gold when they have thousands is almost worse than getting nothing. Idea I had for this, set a specific amount of currency you get for each chest in the game, based on how far into the game it is. But also have a count of how many they opened, and give the player an increasing bonus based on that. So opening a early chest in the late game is still rewarding. That is a good idea.
That's literally just grubs from Hollow Knight.
Yeah, that is. Except Hollow Knight also had the what are they? You had a lot of the caches that you could.
Yeah, like you could find just like random currency around the levels, and it was generally not very much. It wasn't enough to really matter.
It was like a minor reward, and most of the time, after major challenges, it wasn't just currency, but you did have a lot of dead ends that had those. I don't know what you call them, the pill bug shells that you could break.
Let's just call them chests.
Yeah, we'll call them chests.
I was pointing out grubs because I thought I remembered you calling out Hollow Knight for the currency issue. Where you have too much by the end.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, Silverand says in Cathedral the chests are worthless by the end, and yeah, that's true. This is a problem with a lot of games, is that they don't... There's a certain point where money doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, like Fighting Teddy 2, I played recently, had that problem where I had like 3,000 gold at the end, even though I'd cleaned out the entire store.
Well, what games actually have balanced currency throughout the entire thing?
Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Quit making us talk about that game, Master.
We just keep learning why it's the best game to exist. Every time we talk about any mechanic, it's like the Dark Souls did that really well.
EVE Online is what Melphis Belon says. I'm assuming EVE Online when you said EVE.
Yeah.
Like Parasite Eve or something.
Maybe that's what all these Metroidvanias need to do, is like tie their currency to real world money, whereas you earn it in game, you can like exchange it for real money.
It's a great idea.
Don't tell me I'm out of magic now. Is it required? Oh my gosh. Can I master?
How is it required if you can run out?
Oh my
in the
heavens,
fight?
this is retarded. I did not mean to use that word, but I am really angry right now. I hate this dungeon so much. I knew I was going to regret drinking that freaking potion. Gosh.
So how do you fight it now?
Oh, we're never going to leave this place.
Surely.
Do you know how you fight it now? You go like this. Oh my gosh. I'm so mad.
So mad you can't even
I hate this dungeon so much. Hey, look, I've warped to where I need to be. That actually was helpful. Hey, why didn't I warp to the beginning of the dungeon? I thought that was like a Zelda thing.
That was later Zelda games.
Remember how I keep saying that this wasn't my favorite Zelda? And this is all of the reasons. Oh my gosh. Okay. Alright. Gotta have good rewards for puzzles. I think we could all agree with that.
Yeah, but it's still a very common issue.
Now, I'd like to point out that these rules are design rules and not like what makes it a Metroidvania rules.
This is like rules of thumb that if you're designing a Metroidvania, you should generally follow them unless you have a specific reason not to.
Common sense.
Yeah.
And I generally don't like the term common sense.
Yeah.
Because
you're right.
so many people don't don't do it.
Well, it's more that whenever somebody says common sense, it usually means that they don't have any sort of argument.
People overuse the term common sense.
Yeah, it's
People
common
just
sense.
use it as an excuse.
And the funny thing is that usually when people bring up common sense, it's in the context of somebody not having it. Oops. Alright, so instead of arguing about common sense, let's... Number 5. Your power-up progression tree should form a bell curve, where you have a few options for the next ability early, many in the mid-game, and less at the end of the game. Is that a bell curve, or is that a oval?
That's a bell curve.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking of something else. No, that makes sense.
I'm not quite sure how to feel about that. Mostly, I'm having a hard time picturing, like, which games have a curve of... Like, which games have which upgrades available at which time. In a lot of games, a lot of Metroidvanias, you only have 1 or 2 options at any given point.
Yeah, but generally, it feels better to have multiple options in the mid-game so that the game doesn't feel as on rails.
Yes, and replayability. Different paths. Open-endedness.
Yeah. But doing it right at the beginning will generally, like, feel a bit overwhelming.
So I think Symphony of the Night and Super Metroid do this very well. Although Symphony of the Night kind of falls on itself at the end, where you have the entire castle available to you. I'm killing these guys because I want them to drop magic, so I don't have to get it later.
You can just drink your potion.
No. That's being saved for when I get to the boss and I'm out of magic.
Yeah.
So do you think we'll get through this dungeon today?
Yes. I'm hoping I get to it before 10 minutes from now so we can have half an hour of Super Metroid after we're done. The only reason why I'm doing it is because we have to do it eventually, and I'm curious what the power is at the end. Because right now we don't have a lot of options in Super Metroid, and I want to expand that.
I can't wait to see what it is. It's gonna be a green rupee or something.
Okay, so speaking of the magic problem in this dungeon, those red guys, if they touch you, they also drain your magic.
That's not good.
This is the worst dungeon in Zelda history.
All part of the challenge.
As they say, get good.
You say right before he gets zapped hitting them with the sword.
So when is get good actually a valid argument?
It's the thing that Gordon says.
I think it's always technically valid. Like, you are correct that I need to just learn this place. Part of the reason why I hate this place so much is because so many of its designs force you to basically waste time for not having foreknowledge of how the level design is set up.
So you would say that it has unfair difficulty that it's punishing.
I don't know. I mean, you could say it's unfair. Another word I'd like to use is annoying, more than anything. I don't know if the word unfair is what I would use.
I mean, if you're punished for not having knowledge beforehand, is that unfair?
If the knowledge wasn't available to you beforehand, then I would say it's unfair.
It depends. Okay, so it all comes down to, so back on this subject again, it all comes down to how much impact does the failure have. Like in this case, I've circled the same grouping of rooms how many times now? Probably about 5, maybe 7 times. on stream.
And that's why I said the difficulty is punishing.
Oh gosh. Okay, thank you. I was like caught on the edge of that staircase.
The staircase loves you.
So much for a perfect stare the second time. So this is what wasted my mana last time, was killing that thing. Maybe I should try and get through here without using... I don't know. I was one shot away, I bet, from killing the boss that way.
And you just used up a one shot.
Yeah, there's some magic potions in the next room. Actually, part of the reason why I ran out of mana is because I used the Samsara, or what is the name of this thing? It doesn't give you the name. It's because this is the Japanese version of the game. And they removed all of the tooltips.
Why?
Because they're in Japanese, and so they wanted to make it multilingual, I guess. I don't know if that makes any sense.
But it still has text.
So I killed that guy, and then I used that red staff. We're gonna call it the red staff. That's the best way to consolidate that. To push the button, I think that was what pushed me over the edge on having enough mana for the boss. Normally what you're supposed to do is push a block from the upper area into this area. But I'm cheating because I don't want to have to figure out how to get through this dungeon to circle around to that thing that you push. Which, to be honest, is actually kind of clever level design, except for the part where traversing this dungeon is so tedious.
This is probably super elitist or something, but I dislike when I hear that someone just Googled how to get through an entire game. It offends my sensibilities.
So I think some games are improved by Googling because they're just that bad. And sometimes that's the game's fault.
Sure.
Some games are designed in such a way where there's super obscure stuff that, you know, sure, I mean, Googling it, it's a way to do it.
Some games are designed in such a way where they're online games, and conversing with other players is part of the experience.
Yes.
Like a certain game that rhymes with Bark and Souls.
Bark Souls, is that a Souls-like?
Yeah, so I think using the staff is what pushes me over the edge on not having enough mana during this fight.
Shark holes.
Ghost 1.0 room of Dream Treasures stand out. Wasn't that... Okay, so I played that game on roguelike mode. Okay, alright. Now I have my potion ready. I think I don't need anything other than my potion, so let's just fight. Gotta love that sprite lag of the old 90s and 80s. I can't remember if this boss goes hyper when you kill all the pieces. Or, like they have another split boss with the those knights that you have to shoot with a bow. Okay, so this boss doesn't have any berserk section. I didn't even need the potion that time. I guess I got good. Hey, wow, we actually got a heart piece out of that.
How do you guys feel about games that have berserk bosses?
Depends on the game. I like it. Which I think it's actually is it Blasphemous? No, one of the games I played recently, it has a clear marker on its health bar when it's going to go berserk, and I like that. Oh, it was Destroy Space Aliens.
I like bosses having multiple stages where they just like escalate.
Yeah, which is basically what the berserk mode is.
Yeah.
There are some games where the bosses just get gradually faster and faster as you fight them, and that can sometimes be frustrating, especially if the first part is really slow.
Yeah.
It's all about pacing.
If you have a multi-stage boss, you need to make sure the first few stages you can get through really fast.
I really dislike, unless it's a surprise second stage, that's fine. But I dislike when games have like a separate stage being a separate health bar.
Oh yeah, where you think you're done and then you're not.
If the intention is that it's a surprise, then sure, have a second health bar. But If it's just like the boss decides to power up halfway through the fight and that's the second stage, just have it as part of the health bar.
Yeah, like whenever there's a final boss, it's like you know that there's going to be multiple stages. Just show me the whole health bar from the beginning.
Maybe. I mean,
Silverhand says it's hard to talk about this without spoiling games. I think it depends on the game.
I mean, there is a surprise boss. For some reason, even though it's a terrible boss, it's a surprise, and I'm thinking of it. It's not a Dark Souls game, but perhaps you can know what I'm talking about if you've played it. Just from what I've said, from my vague hints.
You could be describing a lot of games with that.
You know, I just noticed that we don't have any weapon upgrades for Samus. Like, we've been really shafted on the Samus side of things.
You've got so many super missiles, though.
So I didn't want to interrupt the conversation, but I'm moving to Metroid because I think everybody's ready for it. Oh, I wish we had
Metroid.
Wall or ledge grabbing in this game. No, we don't. Okay, so what do we do? Let's see.
No, that's a controversial opinion you just said. Ledge
I
grabbing. I know
just...
some people don't like it.
Really?
At all.
Huh, that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say it was terrible, but at least we don't have to bomb jump anymore. That was nice. Okay, so number 6. Make your world as small linearly, height and width, as opposed to area, as possible. It's easier and more enjoyable to backtrack through a world with small dimensions than a large one. Fast travel points can help with this, in which case you want to minimize the maximum distance any part of your world is from a fast travel point. So with no fast travel points, a circle that is completely filled in would give you the best results. Otherwise, you would want your world to look like a series of interconnected circles that are centered on the fast travel points.
The problem is that some people are just terrible at making good, like, condensed level design. So then you have games that are either like not interesting to go through, or they're short, or they go the other route and they just have large dimensions.
Sorry, I need to turn my phone volume off apparently.
Like, you know, games like La Milana just have so much, like, every room has a purpose, usually multiple, or, you know, sometimes multiple purposes. And then
one advantage La Milana has is that you can instantly teleport from wherever you're at, though. Like, even if it didn't have rooms designed that way, La Milana has a very forgiving fast travel system.
You're right, La Milana is forgiving.
Oh my gosh.
But the problem happens if you have too many fast travel points. Like, I just played through Vigil, and it had like, you can fast travel from every single save point, and it had so many save points everywhere that you just never actually backtrack by walking places. You're just like, oh, I'll just teleport to the closest thing. It'll be like a couple screens over.
I thought about bringing this up earlier, actually. When you have lots of teleporting around, it can really ruin the interconnected experience that a Metroidvania has. At least the Metroidvania should have.
Alright, so we can't be in Metroid still because we have the ability to be in the hot areas, but we don't have the wave gun in order to get through that room, although I think there's a way to glitch it. You know what, I'm going to try and do that real quick. But the other room, it looks like we need the high jump, which we still don't have yet, so we may be unable to continue with Super Metroid still. Is there any other places the Varia suit helps you? I think it's only in Orfair, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I think Hollow Knight definitely does fast travel the best. Well, does it? Can't really think of any other Metroidvanias with fast travel that I would say do it better.
Yeah, I think you need the wave gun. There's probably a way to glitch it, I just don't know how.
Because Hollow Knight is very large, but stuff can be spaced out, but it does have. I think it has the right density of fast travel points, where you can fast travel, like, to be in or near an area, but you still have to go through the area.
So, do you think Super Metroid would be improved by having fast travel?
I don't think so. And it's weird to imagine if it had fast travel. Like, maybe, I don't know where you would put the fast travel, to be honest.
Super Metroid has a lot of parts where, like, you're intended to backtrack through a certain area. And, the guided experience that the developers have crafted, if you had fast travel, it would break.
So one of my thoughts on fast travel is that it's a constant struggle between good micro design and good macro design. Designing your game to have good travel is a macro design problem, but you still need to have your challenges be interesting on a micro level. And sometimes in the process of making a really interesting level to play, you make your travel kind of rough. And I think that Hollow Knight kind of suffers from this a little bit, where if it wasn't for save warping, there would be a lot of wasted time just getting back to the stag or, back to your save point. But of course, save warping helps with that. I still think
so. Immersion is like a huge meme in that it's just one of those words that doesn't actually mean anything. But if I were to use it right now, I would say that a lot of fast travel points are immersion breaking.
Oops. Just trying to figure out how to continue with the game right now.
But the stag stations, although they clearly still function and are fast travel points, it feels a little less like the normal immersion breaking fast travel point because of how it's presented.
So do you think like the Axiom Verge, where it's got that platform that moves, is less immersion breaking?
I literally don't remember anything about Axiom Verge.
Okay.
I
Well, that's the fast travel system that it had, is that it had this one long corridor and it had this platform, and you could basically have it go to a different, like go left and right really fast and take you to a different area.
I've heard people mention this, but for some reason I don't remember it.
You could go through the entire game without using it, so it makes sense that you might not remember it.
Maybe I didn't use it.
I don't know. I don't know if I liked it in Axiom Verge. To be honest, Axiom Verge felt a little bit slow going to different areas in general. Which I don't know what makes Super Metroid different, that it doesn't feel that way. And it might be the size problem that you're talking about. And maybe the Axiom Verge's design is just more spread out. And that's why it feels like it's too long to move from one place to another.
Yeah, I think like everyone has their thing that they harp on like way too much, and mine is density, where it's like you should pack as much content into as little space as possible, especially in a Metroidvania.
So you like games that do that?
Yes.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yes, there are a lot of things I really liked about La Mulana. I'm more disappointed in La Mulana than like thinking that it's like everything about it is terrible. Because it did so much stuff that I really liked, and then it did so much stuff that I really hated.
So shouldn't that balance out to be like an average? It was okay.
Yeah, so I treat it like a 3 out of 5 game.
Anyways, did we get through all the rules?
No, we're still going.
Okay.
We're like halfway through the rules.
We got 4 left.
Oh, okay.
You should design each room and each larger area with a layered approach, initial playthrough and backtracking playthrough. Initial playthrough should feel challenging and force the player through as much of the area as possible, while backtracking playthrough should be easy and allow you to get to any place fast. And this is part of what like getting new weapons and that sort of thing kind of helps with, I think.
What are the slowest moving characters in the Metroidvania?
Like the slowest, like maybe the slowest Metroidvanias is what you're asking, or?
Well, I mean, like the character. If your character, which Metroidvania is the most disproportionately the character movement being slow?
I'm trying to think of one that's an issue.
So I know people have complained about it in some games before. I don't really recall which games.
This is annoying. Luckily there's only 3 of them. Oh. There's a game called Legend of the Universe Cosmic Bounty. So I think you start with the left one first.
Right, with Lamalana, not only do you have fast travel at the beginning, but the levels are generally dense, I would say.
And the walk speed's pretty decent. Like, you
And
don't get a dash, but you still are able to walk pretty fast.
I mean, when you consider the fact that you have to do a lot of kind of precise platforming to get through areas, it's not a bad thing that you're maybe slow-ish. I don't know.
I'm literally doing every wrong combination first.
Hate when that
I
happens.
think there might be like an old lady that tells you what the solution to this is, or maybe it is just trial and error, I don't know.
Well, she probably doesn't tell you the solution in this version.
Yes.
The worst is when something is... You don't know if something is intended to be trial and error or not. You just feel really bad doing it if you think it might not be trial and error. That's supposed to be.
Oh crap.
There's just no winning.
Oh,
What did
it's
that do?
the wrong spell.
That is the wrong spell. Shoot, what does this spell open up? Oh, well, we can explore this part of the Dark World. We haven't done that yet. I just remember that I think you need the Ice Wand in order to get into there as well. Like, I think you have to fight the turtle out front, and then you have to switch between spells, I think. Okay,
Anyways,
well-
let's get through these rules before the stream ends.
Yeah, we still got 20 minutes. Generally, the map should be pretty similar. We only have 3 left, so generally, and the last ones are short. Generally, the map should be pretty similar when you end the game than when you started it, and should just be recontextualized by your character progression. If you do change something about the map, it should either not be required to complete the game or obviously communicated to the player. Is this another ESA thing? Oh, Lionels. Oh gosh. No,
So
these guys
like, Cathedral was one of the ones that I felt violated this one with the Ghost NPC. Yeah. I actually stopped playing Cathedral like because of this, and then came back later because you guys were like constantly talking about
raving about it.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Cathedral did, to be honest.
So there was this NPC that was required for progression that isn't there until certain completely unrelated events have happened. And the cemetery is the one I'm specifically thinking of.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was weird. They did patch that. Wait, no, they didn't patch that. But they did patch the cemetery to be less awful.
Yeah.
I must have played it after the patch.
I think.
This is the hardest thing about reviewing anything these days, is because you'll write your review and then a week later they'll like change everything that you complained about. I try to be cognizant of things that will obviously be patched down the road, and then kind
The
of
graveyard was the only thing they really patched. Besides, wasn't there some sort of map tool like a compass or something? I don't. They added, not compass, they added something to make life easier.
Oh, they had a
and then
fast
they
travel back
changed,
to the save point.
maybe, and then they.
That might
Okay,
be
never mind, doesn't matter.
That might be what you're referring to. That was useful. I like that. I'm glad they patched that in. Oh, look at all these treasures. Oh man, there better be lots of Super Metroid stuff in here. No, come on, man.
Do we have any bets for what it's gonna be?
Oh gosh. Okay.
Bombs and rupees, nothing
I
but.
bet you'll find regular missiles in one of these.
Okay. The player should have some way of knowing that a secret area is there. Whether it's the wall looking slightly different, being able to see the room from somewhere, or just showing the secret on a map on the map like Ori or Song of the Deep, etc. I haven't played Song of the Deep.
It's decent.
Doing a secret, is that the same as marking a room in Super Metroid where there's a secret?
No, I mean like.
Oh, a spacer.
If a wall is breakable, then it should be like. It should have cracks on it, or like there should be a hint somewhere saying, "Hey, there's a breakable wall in this room."
Hey, I think there's a breakable wall in here. There should be an NPC in every room that. No, don't fall. Okay, good. Phew.
Like there were, like bring up La Mulana again. There were good breakable walls and there were bad breakable walls. There were.
I remember one of the bad breakable walls. Because behind it was something incredibly useful to like actually beating the game. I don't remember who it was or where it was, but at one point someone was briefly watching me stream for the first time, and they had mentioned that there was a wall I should really hit in an area. Then it just took me like 30 minutes to find the wall.
So Silverin says never trust walls in the Metroidvania, and that is true. I hit every single wall when I play these games.
Oh yeah, one other rule that I thought of after this making this list that's related to that is you should not mix types of fake walls. Like you shouldn't, like if all the walls in your game are breakable, okay, if one of the walls in your game is breakable, then that's how you should do the rest of them. If they're like illusionary walls, then that's how you should do all of them. Because if you have to do wall checks and there's a mix of them, then that means that you have to check them in every single way that they could possibly be. So you have to hit them and then like slide into them or whatever. Like Rabby Ribby had a mix of them, and so every single time I like wanted to check a wall, I had to go hit the wall, and then I had to slide against the wall, and then I had to jump into the wall, just to cover all the bases.
Yeah, you want secret checking to not be tedious.
Right.
Just remembered, like, so I was just having a mini existential crisis because I always say, oh, I beat La Mulana, like, kinda mostly blind. And I totally forgot that someone hinted to me where something important and missable was.
You swallowed your own elitism. Well, this was completely useless. You know, the magic was the best part about this just now. Magic in this game is just... I mean, I need the half magic thing. That would help a lot, I think. And that's probably what you're expected to have by that ice dungeon.
What's the half magic thing?
It makes it so all spells cost half as much.
Oh, makes sense.
Yeah. Let's see. The player should have some way of doing this. Okay, we already read that one, so... Okay, so we're on the last one. Don't put progress blocking things inside of secret areas. So you go through a wall and you can't, you need the double jump in order to continue. Is that what you're kind of referring to?
It's more don't put the double jump inside, like behind a breakable wall.
Ah,
Makes sense.
Like
If you have a breakable wall be like an intended part of your progression, then you want to block the player from that progression. Would it be better to have the secret wall behind the progression?
So you want the secret wall to be... So you're wanting to require the player to find the secret wall?
Maybe it's not mandatory, but let's say that the secret wall is a path that leads to a new area, but you want to gate this with a double jump. So you would want to put the double jump before the area that contains the secret wall, instead of... You think that would be better than having a double jump on the path behind the secret wall?
So if you put something requiring the double jump behind a secret wall, then I think you should put some sort of power-up between them. Otherwise you just like found this secret area and you can't do anything with it, and you're not rewarded in any way for finding the secret.
Silverin asked an interesting question. Which game follows the most of Cauldrath's rules?
Probably like Super Metroid Zero Mission.
so have either of you played? Oh no! Wait a minute. Is there any advantage to? Okay, so what I want. I think I've completed this place already. Oh, okay, so this leads up to... So what does that other hole lead to? Which hole did I jump down?
I think it was the lower right one of those.
You were saying?
Oh, have you guys played Metroid Fusion?
Yes.
Yep.
That game is basically just finding secret walls. That's wall finding the game.
Yeah.
It's interesting how games will often, well not often, but you know, sometimes in the Metroidvania you'll get a basic map, but then you'll have uncharted parts of the map that you then have to discover.
Alright, so for the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to save state here so we don't have to go around every single time. Give me a second here. I just want to check all these holes to make sure I'm not missing anything, but it looks to me like each of these holes lead to the same place, so I just want to double check to make sure that's not the case.
Using technology to fix the game.
Yeah.
You're cheating.
Yeah, okay. Well, it looks like there's nothing to be gained from this, so... We'll go through this one because it's the fastest to get out of here. Alright, well that was all 10 of the rules there. Metroid Zero. Which what?
I was gonna ask which rule is the best, but then I realized that was a terrible thing to ask.
Which of your children are your favorite?
Which rule do people usually break the most with, like, the worst consequences for the game?
Currency.
Yeah. I can see that. Okay, so how do I get to those caves up there? Is there another cliff I could jump off of that I missed? Like, we've explored basically all of this area, and I haven't seen how to get into those caves.
Mel seems to have an answer, probably not about your question, but about the rules.
Fast travel is the best rule.
It's the rule that people break the most often.
Oh,
with the worst consequences.
Blasphemous definitely had a fast travel problem, but they fixed that by making you being able to buy fast travel now.
For like 10k or whatever it was.
20k, but yeah.
20k, geez.
It's totally worth it.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't max out your skill tree at the end of your first run through, even though you like 100% of the game, or at least got the best ending.
I don't know if I
like I got the worst ending, and I had my skill tree maxed out.
So here's a question: why don't more Metroidvanias have a currency sync?
Well, I think part of the problem is finding out what a good currency sync would be. Okay, I have no idea how to get down to those cliffs. Like, nothing seems to lead to those. I think those are part of the dungeon, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
That we can't get into. So I think we're done looting this place.
Let's say there's a shrine in the Hollow Knight, and you leave all your currency there, and it doesn't do much, but maybe it rewards you a couple times.
One of the Hollow Knight's biggest issues is that it has two currencies. So you have the dream currency, which gives you like things like the fast travel and stuff like that, and then you have your regular geo currency. And they did a really good job making the dream currency have lots of relevancy, but the geo just kind of wears off, and ironically that's the one that you lose when you die.
Well, I don't know if I consider the dream thing currency. You don't actually spend it. It's just like once you get enough, it's almost more like experience.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's like leveling up, you're right.
Like Shovel Knight, I never felt like I had way too much. It kind of felt like I had a lot of currency. And I also only played Shovel Knight and Plague Knight, but that game you can buy the expensive cosmetic that makes your character gold, and it doesn't give you any benefits, but you get like special animations and stuff, and you're shiny and you're golden. So.
Oh yeah, one other thing is that when you have, like, sometimes games do have a currency sync, but it's just in the form of one super expensive item. But
like
so
the
you
Rhino.
don't have.
The Rhino in Ratchet and Clank.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
It basically just obliterates every enemy in the area. It's like buying the BFG or something.
So, like, Hollow Knight has the flawless version, or the unbreakable versions of the flawed charms, or whatever they're called, or fragile charms.
Hi, Metroid.
And those are like super expensive. There's generally enough, like, I had enough currency to just get 2 of them, but there was like no smooth transition to them. And Vigil also had that issue where, like, there was, like, if you wanted to buy one of the shop's upgraded weapons, they were like 80,000, and I had like 60,000 most of the game. But there was, like, everything else in the shop was like, I don't know, like 10k or something like that, maybe less. And
Okay, you know what games need? You need... So a good sync, I think.
Oh no.
Some way of upgrading
the
town. If your Metroidvania has like a hub area, be able to spend money to just like renovate houses or something.
So
even if it doesn't give you any tangible benefit, it's something the player can look at and say that's progress, and it also gives you something to do with extra money.
we're back to that game you and Nedu wanted to make.
Yeah.
That was a lot easier than I remember.
Well, you had like 40 super missiles.
Well, when I played this on my actual playthrough this year, this boss really gave me trouble.
You also kind of just face tanked him with all your super missiles.
Yeah, I did, and he gave us literally nothing. Alright, well, is there anything else we can do in this area? I mean, at least we're using our Varia suit. I think if I was amazing with wall jumping, I could probably get us out of here, but I'm not. Let's see.
You'd have to wall jump up there and probably also turn into do the morph ball and then bomb up there.
I mean, hey, you think you hit the thing sticking out of the wall there briefly. I think you can do it.
Try using the power bomb, see if it'll blow up the stuff up there.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. I can jump pretty high. Ah, it's the plasma gun! Oh, I want it so bad. Oh, no! Oh, I did it! I'm happy with myself right now. Sweet. That's the speed booster! How do I get over there? I want it so badly!
Just power bomb again, see what happens.
Okay, we're gonna try power bombing again just to see what happens. Oh my gosh, how are we gonna get to that? Oh. That is the worst place for the speed booster to be. Speaking of which, it didn't turn on my, oh, I guess the Spazer replaces the plasma gun. So basically we just waste. I'm like, wow, we're actually gonna use the Spazer for a run. Like, nope, not this time. I am really happy with myself that I pulled that off.
It is really funny that the only two beams you've gotten are the two mutually exclusive ones.
I'm happy for you too.
I don't think you can actually go through that floor, so... okay, let's see what else we can do here. We're actually coming up on our time. In fact, we're past the time at this point, but... I'm actually kind of excited to be in Metroid. Alright, I'm gonna go through this door. Yeah, we're lacking the high jump, so I'm gonna have to... Oh, great. I'm gonna go do this so I can reset the floor in here. Oh, I'm definitely gonna need this. Have we completed a full line of energy now? We're actually making decent progress on our power level in Super Metroid. I don't think I can make that.
Is it 7 per line? That seems kind of...
14 total? I mean, it has to be an even number.
Sure, okay, 14 total then, yeah, it probably is. Plus it fits up there in the HUD pretty nicely.
Okay, so briefly we had just a little bit of Super Metroid and actually made progress in Super Metroid, so that's good. We got that secret.
Which corner of the screen is better for a health bar?
I don't really have a preference, honestly. I mean, usually the top left is where I look. It's funny because both of these games have opposite... I feel like that was a complete waste of time. Hopefully this room is like full of treasures. Nope. Nothing important back here.
Actually, it is nice to have a health bar directly above your character. I always have that stuff turned on in Path of Exile because it's too much effort to glance to the bottom left side of my monitor.
Yeah, you just need to make sure it doesn't get too intrusive.
I haven't played a lot of games where that's the case, so I don't know if I have a preference in that direction or not. I never played a game where it seemed like I ever had options either, so... Alright, well, we're at a choke point. We know where the speed boost is now, and we know where the high jump is. It's either the high jump or the space jump. If we could get the space jump, then Super Metroid is done. Like, we could just go through that entire game, but... that is the biggest thing we're missing at this point.
Well, there's still parts that you need the wave beam to get through.
Yeah, that's true. Although the plasma beam, that'll be nice. That's really a good thing to have. That makes every boss in the game easier. Alright, so we're missing 2 dungeons and then a lot of Super Metroid. I honestly don't know where to look for treasures at this point.
Don't you need the charge shot to make like any of the beams hurt bosses?
That might be true, actually. You might be right. So that's a problem. Okay, I know that this medallion helps with something, so I think I'm going to look that up for next time. And,
Oh, Master's gonna be mad at you.
For what?
For looking things up.
I you know what? I don't have any problem with looking up something just because my memory doesn't remember it. Plus, playing it with the randomizer and not having played the game recently makes it really, like, it breaks my brain. Like, I can't remember where the speed booster is in Super Metroid now. So, all right. Well, I think that is our stream for this week. Thank you everyone who joined in and made comments, and I think we had a good discussion going. I like Cauldrath's list. It was a good way to talk about Metroidvania game design, and maybe we can go into more depth on any of those subjects in future weeks. Do either of you have anything else you wanted to say before we sign off?
No.
Nope.
Nope. All right. Well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.